Explosions rang out in the capital Kyiv and other cities as Russia invaded Ukraine. They came after Russia's President Vladimir Putin ordered a military operation into Ukraine's east. Russian forces fired missiles at several cities and landed troops on Ukraine's southern coast. Several Ukrainian civilians were reportedly killed.
Телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared martial law. He also called on citizens to fight, saying weapons will be issued to everyone who wants them. Ukraine's allies have been quick to condemn Russia's actions and avowed hard-hitting sanctions.
Today, in concert with our allies, we will agree a massive package of economic sanctions designed in time to hobble the Russian economy. And to that end, we must also collectively cease the dependence on Russian oil and gas that for too long has given Putin his grip on Western politics.
These sanctions are designed to take a heavy toll on the Kremlin's interests and their ability to finance war. And we know that millions of Russians do not want war. President Putin is trying to turn the clock back to the times of the Russian Empire. But in doing so, he is putting at risk the future of the Russian people. I call on Russia to immediately stop the violence and to withdraw its troops from Ukraine's territory. We will not let President Putin tear down the security architecture that has given Europe peace and stability over many decades. We will not allow President Putin to replace the rule of law by the rule of force and ruthlessness.
Les événements de cette nuit sont
French President Emmanuel Macron says his country will respond without weakness to Russia's act of war against Ukraine, saying Russia should expect tough sanctions that would hit its military, its economy, and its energy sector. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says Russia has launched a cold-blooded, long-planned invasion.
This is a grave moment for the security of Europe. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine is putting countless innocent lives at risk. With air and missile attacks, ground forces and special forces from multiple directions, targeting military infrastructure and major urban centers. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion. Despite its litany of lies, denials and disinformation, the Kremlin's intentions are clear for the world to see. Russia's leaders bear full responsibility for their reckless actions and the lives lost.
Ukrainian state air traffic services has closed the country's airspace. Traffic jams have formed in the capital, Kyiv, as residents try to leave the city. Residents have also sought shelter in stations and queues forming for buses, cash points and petrol.
Hours after Russia attacked Ukraine, following the tension war that has built up in the past weeks, lawmakers in the House of Representatives call for an urgent evacuation of Nigerians in Ukraine, even as some fear that it may be rather too late.
Concerned that if a strategic plan is not put in place to secure and provide safe passage for our citizens, they may be trapped or worse, harmed.
The President of the United States of America, about 4 or 5 days ago, said that he said with certainty that it was imminent that President Putin would order his forces into Ukraine. That was the period within which we should have used to evacuate our people from that country. We must look for how best to evacuate our citizens who are locked up in Ukraine, especially the students, because their case is very, very, very
unique.
The urgency of the situation prompts the House to turn to a man who voluntarily offered to evacuate Nigerians from South Africa during the xenophobic attacks in 2019 and stranded Nigerians from the United Kingdom following the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020, Allen Onyema.
We have somebody in this country that is very humane and is ever ready in this type of situation. Chairman Air Peace, we should appeal to him the way he did it before.
I think the leader of the House, the chairman of Foreign Affairs, should liaise with the Foreign Affairs Ministry today.
With all sense
and
of
if nothing positive comes out of that meeting and it's all about red tape, we have to do this, we have to do that, I think you should liaise with the chairman, Air Peace.
Yes.
And whatever it's going to cost the House, whatever we need to do, I think we need to leave this. You need to leave this country latest tomorrow, and head to Ukraine and head on back by Monday with as many students or citizens who are willing to come back.
As the House considers evacuation of Nigerians, there are concerns about the possibility of that evacuation, considering that Ukraine has shut its airspace to civilian flights. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
You know, Ukraine and Russia might be over 8,000 kilometers away from Nigeria, but make no mistake, the war between both countries will have and is already having effects on Nigeria on different levels. First, on the citizens living in Ukraine and perhaps in Russia as well, on our mainstay of the economy, oil, gas prices, and so much more, which is why it's important to pay attention to this now and hope that it doesn't escalate. But what are the issues at stake and how do we find our way around this? This morning we're joined on the program by Honorable Yusuf Buba. I mean, you just saw the National Assembly and some of the proceedings. He's the Chairman, Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives. Joins us via Zoom from Abuja to get a sense of what's been done at that level. We also have joining us Professor Khalifa Dikwa, who is a Professor of International Relations. He joins us from our Maiduguri studio. And also, Jesuni Omoyi is a student of Kharkiv National School of Economics. He joins us from Kiev in Ukraine. You might call that ground zero this morning. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. And I'd like to begin with Jesuni Omoyi because it's important to get what is exactly happening on the ground right now. It's been about 24 hours since that invasion. Can you describe to us, I mean, what has been going through your mind and what's happening on ground right now?
Well, right now, we are monitoring the situation. Kyiv generally is also being attacked. We had 2 recent bombings. That's very early this morning. But basically, the military strikes are targeted towards military infrastructure. So residential apartments and general social life is not being attacked in any way. So the major targets for these airstrikes and these drone strikes are actually military infrastructures. However, there will be some civilians definitely who would be, victims of some of these things, but they are not the targets nonetheless. Generally, also other regions of Ukraine has also been attacked. We have Odessa being attacked. We have Kharkov, Kyiv. And what's currently happening right now is that a lot of students are, walking to get to the border of Poland, and so that they can have some sort of safety in Poland right now. So most students are going through the city of Lviv, which is a direct, a train ride to or a bus ride to the border of Poland. And then from there, the Polish government has been very supportive, and they have offered to open their borders to African, immigrants, especially those who are students, and give a 15-day visa, where you would be allowed to stay there for 15 days, and also they would provide you with meal, with an accommodation, and with some basic health, supplies should in case you've been affected by the war. So generally, I would say that the fight is still fairly on, but we are also monitoring and seeing what would come out of it. At the end of the day, we believe that it would all end up in very, very peaceful negotiations. And at the end of the day, we believe that Putin would relax on these sanctions.
Certainly the hope of a lot of people right now. But we understand that there are thousands, 12,000 Nigerian students in Ukraine. So clearly we have a lot of citizens there that we need to ensure that they are well protected. How would you describe the support you've gotten from Nigerian authorities represented in Ukraine, Ukraine primarily now, I'm not even talking Russia, but how would you describe the support, the help you've gotten?
Well, I would say it's fairly okay. Before the war started, I spoke with the ambassador, and he also was of the reasoning that we should remain calm. Okay. However, we tried to reach him yesterday through various platforms, but unfortunately, and we also tried to reach the embassy, but we couldn't get any response. And I also believe that they were trying, maybe they had a lot on their hands at that time, and they were trying to get as much information and intel that we needed to provide an information. But in general, I would say that they've been supportive, and of course, looking at how the government has also responded in terms of creating the need to have an evacuation process, as long as with the alliance with Air Peace to get some Nigerians out of here. I think it's a very, very commendable idea, and I would love to praise them for it as well.
Well, it's only in the face of the fact that, generally there's that word out there that the airports are shut, and you also talked about the fact that some Nigerians are moving towards Poland to seek some sort of reprieve or protection for themselves. So, with the government promising to evacuate Nigerians from Ukraine and the airports shut, it definitely looks or sounds like a quagmire right there. What then are the options? What are the options for Nigerian students right now, especially when you say some are moving to Poland?
Poland, yeah. Well, when you are having a situation like this that is tense, the first thing is to remain calm and not panic. For people who are in residential, areas, I think the best option right now is to remain calm and stay indoors. Like I said earlier, the attack is not focused on residential areas. That's not where the attack is focused on. It is military infrastructure. But obviously, there will be civilians who will be victims of that strike. So the bombs and the airstrikes are not targeted into residential areas and general social life. So if you're in Kyiv or in any place in Ukraine as a Nigerian student, the best thing to do is to stay indoors right now, especially if where you are is not in any form of serious attack right now. And you have to also think of how the government is responding to this, and we have to be patient with the government because, if the airspace is short, there's nothing they can do. And so I believe that right now the Ukrainian authorities are currently, shutting down the airspace because they are also trying to save lives, and they are also trying to, protect the risk of another airstrike that of which the civilians or the people who are taking these flights would be victims of. So, but I also believe that maybe in the next 2 to 3 days, the airspace will be open because it's not only Nigerian government that is looking on how to evacuate their students. China is also thinking about that. And I do understand that there are also some countries that are also trying to take the same decision. So definitely there would be a consensus, I believe, that would come at some point where there will be an exception for diplomatic interventions. There will be an exceptions for diplomatic, interference from countries who are seeking to evacuate their nationals. So I believe that is what is going to come to be. And if Ukraine gets a lot of requests for that, I believe that they can open the airspace just for that purpose, not for anything else, not for commercial flights. But pending that time, the best thing to do is to stay indoors and still monitor the situation to stay indoors and still monitor the situation, and we would believe that with time it will get better. Then if you're also thinking of going to Poland, like I said, Poland has opened borders for Nigerian students. However, we have to also be careful about the road situation, because it's safer to be inside than to be on the road where you don't understand what's going to happen, and the code is also still there. So these are factors that you have to consider, or you have to think about when you're making decisions right now. But if you're calm and you don't panic, I believe that you would make some quality decisions, and at the end of the day, we'll be able to get out of this very well.
Okay, we'll come to Honorable and Prof in a moment, but just before that, Jason, I'd like to know, there are those who are of the opinion that, the government responded too late. I recall that I think one of the members on the floor was saying, well, at this point it might be too late. Do you have a sense that things should have or could have moved faster in terms of the response and the evacuation? And would you be willing to be evacuated at some point?
Well, I'm not going to put a fault on the government, honestly, about the response time, because then again, there were a lot of conflicting information before the strike actually happened. Internally, everything was going so fine, and there was constant, information from the Ukrainian government that we should be calm and everything is going fine. Okay, so I would also believe that the government was also trying to monitor the situation and not make knee-jerk decisions. So I'm not going to totally put the government at fault of this, because we were all monitoring the situations, like I said. The only countries that tried to make an evacuation process were countries that had, like some embassies in Kyiv, and there were very few. I think Canada did not even fully evacuate their nationals. They only moved their in-staff in the embassies to another city. So I would not put any blame on the government. I would say that every sovereign country were trying to monitor the situation and to see, the extent of the escalation. And now that something has happened, I can see the response from the government, which I had praised early on. So I'm not going to fault the government on that. I'm not going to put a blame on the government. I believe that it was being monitored, and they were trying to make the best decisions backdoors while all of these deliberations were going on. And as for the question on if I want to be evacuated, yes, I am willing to be evacuated right now. If I'm hoping that it comes, and I believe that there could be a consensus between the Ukrainian government and all of the countries that are willing to evacuate their nationals, and we can make a consensus from that, and hopefully we save the lives of people who are just students here, and who also, and get rid of the fear that is in the people's hearts, because right now there's a lot of fear in people's hearts.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason. Let's take it to Honorable Buba. It was important to get, Jason's point of view and understand what's going on right there before we now take on the other issue. So, Honorable Buba, thank you for your patience. So, Jason says he's willing to be evacuated, and that's just one side of the story. The other side is the fact that Nigeria is making plans, and on the floor of the House, we saw the proceedings and the resolution to have some sort of conversation with an airline and get that sorted out. So first, has that conversation started? Do we have an agreement now on how we're going to evacuate Nigerians when the airspace is opened?
Yes, definitely. Arrangements are in full gear to evacuate Nigerians. In fact, as you had on the floor yesterday, the Speaker directed that the leader of the House and myself to move to Ukraine immediately to coordinate activities. And after that, we met with the officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the presidency, and arrangements are in full gear. And I want to say that the ambassador in Ukraine issued a press statement since 26th of January, and issued phone numbers, emergency phone numbers that Nigerians can call in case they are in distress. And I am sure most Nigerians have these phone numbers and have been in contact with the embassy. Even this morning, just about an hour ago, I spoke with the ambassador, and he gave me a detailed brief on what is happening. But most importantly, the call from the ambassador to Nigerians is to remain calm. In situations like this, we have to be calm and remain where they are, because the civilians are not the target. The target are military installations. So if you have any information or any distress, you can call any of the numbers issued by the embassy since 26th of January.
What exactly do you mean by what operations or the conversation preparations are in full gear? What does full gear mean? Are you saying you have the word of Air Peace or any other airline to airlift them? Has that been sorted out? Can you break down the full gear for us so we know exactly where we are and perhaps what we need to do?
What I'm saying is government, specifically the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, are making all arrangements of airlines that will move in. Immediately the airspace is open. So all the logistics and preparations to achieve that is taken care of by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I'm sure immediately the airspace is open, airlines will move in from Nigeria to evacuate our citizens.
Okay, so what exactly is the role of the House now? Because that resolution was put forward, and it came across as though the House was going to lead the charge on this, speak with Air Peace or perhaps any other airline. And I recall the leader of the House actually volunteered to be a part of that evacuation team. So how is the House, what role is the House of Reps playing in all of this?
Yeah, there was a tall order from the Speaker that the leader of the House and myself, the Chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee, should liaise with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and make arrangements to see how we will move immediately to Ukraine to coordinate evacuation of Nigerians. And we left the floor immediately to start talking with the ministry and making all necessary arrangements to move until we were told that the airspace was closed. So all arrangements are in place. The Minister of Foreign Affairs has assured us, and the role of the Parliament is to oversight the activities of the Executive. So we'll keep on talking with the Executive, talking with the Minister. As I told you 1 hour ago, I just spoke with the Ambassador in Ukraine, and he assured me that so far so good. And yesterday night, I talked with Nigerian students through tutor call, and they asked a lot of questions. And this morning, I also discussed with the ambassador to also link, and the anchor of that program will also link the ambassador to answer or talk to Nigerian students and Nigerians in Ukraine directly via the tutor call program. And I am sure once citizens are calm, once these students are calm and remain where they are, by the grace of God, things will turn for the better in a couple of days. They will be evacuated.
Yeah, Honorable, you said you spoke with the Nigerian ambassador in Ukraine, just about an hour or so ago. Could you give us an idea of what are some of those things that has been done or that have been done for Nigerian students right there in Ukraine? Especially, what are the steps that have been taken so far as from the perspective of the ambassador in your conversation?
Yeah, just as I said, the ambassador issued a press conference and made telephone numbers available to all citizens of Nigeria since 26th of January. And from that day, even this morning, the ambassador told me that his phone number and other contact numbers of the embassy staff have been open 24/7, and they have been receiving calls and talking to Nigerians on what to do. And basically, the advice is to remain calm, remain where you are until further instructions are given. And basically, in situations like this, that is what we are expecting. Because if you go out of your location, you are exposing yourself to danger. More especially, there is an issue of language. You may go into a territory where the communication will be difficult and you'll be exposing yourself to unnecessary danger. So,
Honorable, just a quick one before we go to Prof. You said that in that conversation with the ambassador, was there any hint as to when the airports are likely to open, since you have that mandate from the Speaker of the House of Representatives?
Well, definitely, I think there's no hint. That will be the decision of the government of Ukraine, and we hope it should be soonest.
All right. Well, let's speak with Professor Dikwa in our Maiduguri studio right now. Well, Prof, most certainly the whole world is just wondering exactly what is happening right now. It's definitely a mixed bag. From your perspective, exactly what are we dealing with here, and how does this affect Nigeria directly?
Good morning. Good morning, Ayo and Coyote. It will affect Nigeria in the sense that Nigeria is a big player in world affairs, and then if there is anything like oil glut or oil jump, the prices of oil jumps, for instance, it will also affect Nigeria. And then in the case of Nigeria, it will have to submit another budget for subsidy, the so-called subsidy. And that, again, it is in our own case, if I dare say that if Nigeria cannot deal with the few who are making the billions out of subsidy by sabotaging the fixing of the refineries and so on, let them enjoy it rather than loading it on the people of Nigeria. In terms of pricing of oil, it will affect Nigeria. And then secondly, about the students, I spoke with one of the Nigerians from Borno State in Russia, and he was able to put together a statement that anybody who could go to his place, it was out. In addition to what the ambassador did, Ambassador Shaw did a very good job. And thirdly, we have a situation in which only the National Assembly and the federal government, particularly the Federal Ministry of Works Affairs, is very swift at coming and talking about Nigerians outside when they cry foul, whatever they do, including those who are inmates somewhere else, but hardly do the same for Nigerians inside. And I dare say that there's diaspora chairman, Ms. Abike Dabiri Arewa, has been doing a very good job. I dare also advise the Minister for Foreign Affairs that it is good to always talk. It is never, as a Minister of External Affairs, never to avoid saying certain things. And he only talks when it is in the East. Hardly sees anything wrong in Europe or the West. And this is something that cannot help us. And it is for Nigeria to remain calm and neutral for now, rather than aligning with either the West or the East. It is high time for Nigeria to remain here. And Nigeria as a leader will not be cowed into taking side, and because Nigeria will help pick its friends. It is high time we pick our friends, real friends, who do not go and let us there in the sun. And again, and in United Nations again cannot be neutral again for its bias towards Russia. Russia is one of the permanent members of the Security Council. Submitted its security concerns to NATO. NATO just snubbed Russia, refused, threatened it that something will happen to it, and we knew that nothing will happen beyond economic sanctions. and that now today Ukraine is left alone because weapons and rhetoric cannot help Ukraine. Ukraine is closer to Russia, next door neighbor, and that he said the only way the war itself will have been avoided if Ukraine had been encouraged to renounce its joining NATO for some times.
Right.
Because just put yourself in the shoes of Vladimir Putin. You wouldn't have just watched being harassed, humiliated, and then threatened. You allow your security to be taken for granted.
Okay, Prof, I mean, it's quite interesting, some of the insights you have given. But for a lot of people that this happened on, I mean, we have a lot to deal with in Nigeria, and all of a sudden they're hearing a Russian invasion into Ukraine. We'll go to break now, but when we come back, I'd like you to simplify this issue for a lot of people wondering, why are these nations at war? Is there a simple explanation? And good thing is you have a benefit from the USSR to the early 90s and up till now. So perhaps you can give an insight, a simple explanation as to why these nations are at war. And we'll take a look at the possibilities in the coming days. So please don't go away. We'll be right back.
Our first priority is to the Nigerian citizens that find themselves in Ukraine at the moment. We've been engaging over the last 3 weeks with our embassy in the Ukraine, and I've been personally in touch with the ambassador on almost daily basis since then. And of course, the big challenge was whether to issue a travel advisory for all the Nigerian students and others living in Ukraine to leave. Now, an advisory was given that those who felt the need to leave should do so. The consensus amongst the diplomatic representation of the various countries in Ukraine was that the citizens should stay. Of course, Russia was asserting that they were not going to invade, while of course the US, as we know, and some other Western countries were saying that an invasion was imminent. So it was difficult to know who to really believe. The Ukrainian government was assuring the citizens there that they should just go about their normal business. And some Nigerian students who were interviewed, said that, to all intents and purposes, they were totally oblivious and unaware of any crisis, and it was just when they turned on the news or whatever that they heard that there might be there's some issues. So so the advice from our mission was not to panic, but importantly a hotline was set up by the embassy and reaching out to all the Nigerians and letting them know the number which they can call if they were in any kind of trouble. Now, of course, the attack, military action, is underway. I've been in touch with the ambassador today. He's reassured me of the safety of the Nigerians in the Ukraine, and very importantly that so far all the attacks have been against military installations in the Ukraine. So that's the situation as of now. But of course the airports are closed, and so I've told him that there are 5 airports. Inform the Nigerians who are still in the Ukraine that once the airports are reopened, that arrange in an organized fashion for those who feel that they want to leave to go to the nearest airports to them, and we will see then how we can assist for them to leave the country. Well, some are going by land, crossing into Poland and some of these countries, our advice from the embassy is to stay calm, stay in their residence, and once there is an opportunity, the airport opening up, we'll have a coordinated approach to getting them out. So all the resources available to the embassy will be directed towards an orderly, a process of evacuating those who want to leave. We have good relations with Russia. We have good relations with Ukraine as well, which is why we are urging for diplomacy. And of course, we have good relations with the U.S. We're members of the United Nations and would, this matter will almost certainly come up within the United Nations. And our position would always be to avoid violence and military conflict and to prioritize under all circumstances, peaceful resolution of disputes and prioritizing dialogue and diplomacy.
That was Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema, speaking on the situation. Well, we've also been speaking here with Jesuni Omoyi, a Nigerian in Ukraine, as well as Honorable Yusuf Buba, the Chairman, Foreign Affairs Committee in the House of Reps, and Professor Khalifa Dikwa, Professor of International Affairs, or International Relations this time around. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Well, Prof, just before we went on that break, I wanted to get a simple explanation as to what's happening in that region, because you hear words like, what the Russian president saying is not seeking to occupy the country, he just wants demilitarization, denazification. That you hear regions of Donbass, Donetsk, Luhansk, and all of it. It's a lot to grapple with. So is there a simple explanation as to why these two nations are at war?
Let me explain it in a simple way, because most of us are not good at international relations, including the academics. Sometimes we behave like local champions in our approaches to world affairs. As far as Nigeria is concerned, for instance, Nigeria is a big player in world affairs. You cannot talk about Africa without talking of Nigeria. And I was surprised to hear our minister talk about repatriating only Nigerians rather than saying all Africans. Nigeria, from henceforth, Nigeria should always talk about Africans as a whole rather than being individualistic and petty. This is not good for our image abroad. The war now, the war, about the simple way of putting it, Ukraine is a very friendly country, industrial country from which we could buy weapons and others. Similarly, Russia is one of the developed nations in the world. And therefore, the ideal thing for Nigeria is to appeal for cool heads to reign rather than taking side. Yes. So President Vladimir Putin submitted its security concerns when NATO, led by U.S., wanted to include Ukraine into NATO, which is a threat to it, just the way Crimea was to it. Because in addition to that, the West, UK, the Brexit UK, America, others began to dump weapons and near the borders. That was why in 2014 Russia decided to annex Crimea and Sevastopol, very close to it. And today, the place that is now vulnerable is Donbas side, the eastern side of Ukraine.
Honorable,
The
just
eastern side, which is also
Prof.
what do you call him, Russian speaker
Prof,
speaking there.
just 1 second,
Russian
Prof,
speaking. And that
if you
the
don't mind.
opinion is divided whether to align
just 1 second, Prof.
to be part of Russia or to remain independent and consider Russia as a big brother.
Prof, just 1 second, Prof, if I can ask a question.
So
just 1 second. Just 1 second, Prof.
Nigerian students may not need to come home because yesterday was air attacks, sea attacks, and so on. Today is a ground field. They may go for a regime change, and once that one is done, it's a matter of time to anchor or just to impose a pro-Russian government. The way the previous was toppled with conspiracy from the West. Yes,
Yes, just a question along the line of something that you raised earlier about the U.S. including Ukraine in NATO. One is just wondering, how is that a problem? How is that a threat to anyone if Ukraine is an independent nation as well?
Yes, it is. It is because you cannot, you are closer to Ukraine. Russia is closer to Ukraine. And then the fact that Ukraine is being used to threaten Russia's security. Ukraine is not a member of NATO yet, but when interests are on the table, sometimes they break the law of saying only NATO when attacked, only NATO members when attacked, all of them will just come together. And there is every possibility of now division within NATO with the likes of Turkey and so on. In 1989, NATO sent its troops to Kosovo, though Kosovo was not part of NATO. And that you cannot, even you yourself put yourself in the shoes, you will not allow your neighbor who was part of the former Soviet Union to now go into coalition with countries very far away, very far off you, then to come and not giving you guarantee for your own security. And therefore, and again, it was, Russia was also flabbergasted by the toppling of the pro-Russian president in the past with so many conspiracy theories and so on. This is something that the ideal neighbors first before those who are very far away, no matter how influential. And again, Ukraine ought to have read it between the lines to at least have a hidden talk with the Russian president that we are together, nothing will happen.
Okay.
And now it's a situation in which America, to be fair to America, America said no American troops will be there on ground to fight for Ukraine. But America has troops in Germany, it has in Poland, and so on. Okay. The only Ukraine should have been playing the same game as Belarus, to be much friendlier to Italy, even if it is independent. Independence will remain independent. I don't think it will be annexed like Crimea, which was very sensitive, very strategic to its own security. It is about geopolitics.
You have provided extensive background to this,
yes,
and I think for a lot of people, they can approach this better now based on that background. Let's take this back to Ukraine, where it's all happening with Jesuni, the Nigerian in Ukraine. And first, I must commend, as you were speaking, I saw the calmness with which you spoke, and I must commend that because it clearly shows that you are, taking this on well. But for how long more? Because if the plans for evacuation, God forbid, if things don't let up in the coming days, I wonder what your plans are, and by extension, for other Nigerians. Yes. Do you feel safe enough, really?
Well, you have to look at all the dynamics. You have to look at all the dynamics. I do believe that in time all of this will be resolved. Now, regarding if maybe the airspace is not open, maybe in a couple of days, like like one of the speakers did say, it is much more dangerous for you to be on the road. It's much more dangerous for you to be on the road because you could be a victim of an unintentional strike. Okay. And then again, you also have to take into consideration that you're a foreigner in this land. So you cannot just be loose about your movement just because you're trying to seek for your safety, that there are no guarantees of that. Okay, so even if there are maybe an extensions of time in terms of getting a full consensus on as to what to do, I would still rather urge Nigerian students to remain calm and still stay indoors. That's still the best decision, I would still say. I believe that this is being worked on. I mean, generally, the international community, they are also still working on making Putin see reasons why this should not hold. But nonetheless, we cannot determine how long this is going to be. And so, unlike, one of the speakers also said there are, workings on having an evacuation. And I believe that very, very soon it will be done. I believe that there can be diplomatic arrangements that gives exclusivity for these, flights to come in just mainly for evacuation. Because like I said, and like all the speakers have said, civilians are not the targets, neither are residential areas the targets. So using that information, then we can make some basic, decisions and not just run into hasty and knee-jerk decisions. So I would say let's be calm and let's watch what happens. But while we're doing that, we stay indoors. The residential areas in most of these locations that are mentioned on news tabloids are not affected. They're not affected. It's basically military installation and military infrastructure. Those are the places where you have a lot of targets. But unfortunately, like I said, because there will be people around and there will be civilians around those places, they will be definitely affected by the airstrikes and the military parades. But if you're indoors and you're within a residential, a residential place, you would not be affected. So I would say the need to be calm and to be poised is very, very important right now. Okay. And I also believe,
Just a quick one. When you talk about, you've said it over and over again that people, should remain calm and all of that. And I remember that Twitter conversation that the Honorable mentioned as well. There was that call to remain calm. I remember one of the speakers, one of the students, I believe in Ukraine, saying it's not easy to be calm. So how easy is it for you and for as many people as you can speak for? How is it to remain calm when you can hear all of those noise and bombings and all of those things?
Well, first of all, I think the way that you can do that, or the way to remain calm, is first of all to, like I said, know that you are not even the target. And yes, there's a lot of tension out there, but knowing that you are not the target should give you some sense of peace. Of course, generally, on a holistic scale, it's difficult to be calm because, there is actually, invasion. There's an invasion. So it's difficult for you to generally remain calm because there are so many news here and there. Russia is doing this, Ukraine is fighting back. So many groups are being created, Telegram, WhatsApp, and, Twitter is going haywire. So definitely, from the external pressure, there would be a lot of impetus not to remain calm. But at the same time, you also have to look at things from a very strategic perspective. You have to see what is really going on. First of all, you are not the target. It's not like it's a refugee war where they are attacking any black person or where they are attacking anybody who's just on the road. That's not what's happening.
Okay.
So first of all, you're not the target. Yeah. So if you're not the target, you have to work with that information. Now, if you're not the target, then you also have to look at stipulated regulations that will help your safety. So what you do is like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs did say, stay at home, stay indoors. Okay, stay indoors and connect with as many people as you can to all stay indoors. Okay, so that you restrict the level of danger and pain that you might encounter while all of this is going on. Yeah.
Honorable, so this is the situation that we find ourselves now. Students are encouraged to remain calm, and you spoke about that Twitter conversation and everything. From all of that, one is wondering how the students, on the one hand, are taking all of the information that is coming to them. But With the airports shut and almost nothing doable now, what are the options for government? What are the options for the House of Representatives?
Well, the most important thing is the Embassy of Nigeria in Ukraine is fully in charge of coordination, and they have issued out emergency numbers very early, since 26th January. And another thing is that the National Assembly are already liaising with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other arms of government, and preparations are in full gear. There is government-to-government talk at a diplomatic level to see that the airspace is opened for evacuation. Once that is done, Nigerians will be moving. But most important is for our children, the students, and other citizens to remain calm and remain at home. And yes, there will be tension when you hear bombings around you, but you are not the target, and going out will further endanger your lives. As I said, there is issue of language, communication, and so on. So once you leave your home or your school, it will be difficult for the embassy to get in touch with you and pick you up during evacuation. The embassy have profiled all Nigerians and students in Ukraine. They have their contacts, they know where they are. And so during evacuation, it will be very easy to pick you up if you remain calm and remain at your residence or at the address that is already known by the embassy. That is the basic advice.
All right. On a final note, so we're closing in about a minute. Prof, I mean, this conversation has largely doused the fears and, the tension, especially for Nigerians in Ukraine. But on a wider scale now, there are fears that this might snowball into something bigger, perhaps another world war, God forbid. Do you see that happening? In 30 seconds, if you can, Prof.
Yes. In fact, I saw it coming. And the only thing the Nigerian embassy should do now is to look for a shield underground somewhere, perhaps within the embassy itself, to keep Nigerians safe. There's nothing they could do for now, because the entire war may not maybe for hours or just a few days, because Ukraine is not a match for Russia, and no Western country will take part in it. And therefore, it is about flogging the stubborn young rather than going into war. And to be fair to President Zelensky of Ukraine, who tried to reach out to President Putin, he was unable. And it was the French President Macron who relayed the message that he wanted to talk to him. It was too late. It was too late, because the warnings had been there for long. And therefore, we just pray for an end, because we in Nigeria, those of us from Borno, know how terrible a war can be.
Absolutely.
And therefore, we should not even wish a war for your enemy. It must end. Yes, it must
Prof,
end.
I think, in fact, you just said
no
it may
need
not...
to even talk about evacuation, because this is just a copy, simply because Western countries are doing it, and that Nigeria should also do it. And why is it that when it is happening, when the West that invaded another country like Libya in the past, Nigeria didn't go to evacuate Nigerians. It was afterwards. The same thing when U.S. and coalition invaded Iraq and Syria. Why Ukraine is specifically different? Ukraine is a friendly country. Russia is a friendly country. And therefore, I reiterate my earlier stand that Nigeria should remain neutral.
Right.
We don't even need to protest an invasion or no invasion, because
okay, well, Prof,
the Western press
I think that point has been made. We're totally out of time now. I actually overshot the 30 seconds, which I gave. Prof, if you can hear me. Pardon me, we're totally out of time, but I think, in fact, you have said that this might not snowball into a World War III. So We'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But I'd like to thank you so much for your insightful contributions. Professor Khalifa Dekwa is a professor of international relations, joined us from our Maiduguri studio. We've also been speaking with Honorable Yusuf Buba, who is a chairman, House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and Jesuni Omoyi, who is of Kharkiv National School of Economics at Kiev in Ukraine, joined us live as well. Would like to thank you so much, especially Jesuni. I wish you the very best, and please stay safe. Well, that's been our conversation on that one, but we're not done just yet. We're going to pay attention to another issue domestically this time around, so please stay with us.